The impact this amendment could have is far-reaching. Research from charities such as the Papworth Trust and Heappey has shown that disabled people who have a home who works for them are 4 times more likely to be in paid employment. If we are as serious as I believe we are about halving the disability employment gap, we need to get serious about this amendment too. Mr Deputy Speaker, I have highlighted the issues every member of this House knows we face and the impact that the lack of accessible housing is having and will continue to have on our economy and, more importantly, our society. My amendment poses no additional cost to government. Indeed, it would save the government and thus the taxpayer a huge sum. All it asks is that we put into law that which is already provided as guidance in the NPPF. All I'm asking for is that planning authorities must consider the needs of the whole population. What arguments against this amendment could there possibly be? I do not accept this will place an additional burden on developers and thus cost to the consumer. The additional cost to make a home accessible from the outset is absolutely minimal. And having run my own manufacturing business, I know how powerful competitive necessity can be in driving costs out.
Will you give way?
Yes.
I'm grateful to Mon Le Pen for giving way. She makes a very important point about the affordability and accessibility of a property once living in it. And I wonder if she might include in what she's encouraging developers and local authorities to consider to be the efficiency of homes from an energy perspective so that elderly people can live in warm homes as well as accessible ones.
My honourable member makes an extremely important point. It's all about thinking about things before having to retrospectively fit them afterwards. So a warm, efficient and saving money for elderly people, of course, is absolutely vital. Some might argue that legislating from central government for these amendments would take power away from local authorities, but my amendment doesn't remove any local power at all. If anything, it bolsters it. National demographic changes are happening now. We need more accessible housing now. And I believe we have an opportunity to act now. Mr Deputy Speaker, this is how we make this country truly a country that works for everyone.
Time and again, our constituents have been encouraged to produce neighbourhood plans. I remember about 2 years ago, the honourable member, or right honourable member as he may be, for Grantham and Stanford, who was then a predecessor of the ministers in the department for local government and communities, came at my invitation to Sandbach Town Hall to talk to residents who were concerned about this barrage of applications by developers, thousands and thousands of houses that they were applying for to be built across my constituency. And he said the way you can protect your local communities is through developing neighbourhood plans. And so that galvanised the communities, many of whom I've just referred to, into working towards these neighbourhood plans. As some have said, some residents putting in hundreds of hours in order to do so. But yes.
I'm grateful to Mon Le Pen for giving way. She describes a situation that I'm sure we all recognise well. And indeed, in my experience, many local communities will engage very positively with their neighbourhood and local plan to identify what the housing need for an area will be and plan accordingly. But does she share my frustration that because of the robust protections afforded to the Bristol and Bath green belt to the north of my constituency, having made our plans in Somerset, much of their housing demand is displaced southwards, and we end up having to absorb that as well, out with our planning?
I do very much empathise with the concerns the honourable member has expressed. Here's what another resident says. Unless a neighbourhood plan is given significant weight, and that's what I and many colleagues this afternoon have asked the Minister to do, then he's saying, when made, we would advise others not to put the time and effort into what is increasingly looking like a futile and wasteful exercise. And another resident pointed out that the fact sheet that I've referred to actually says, should a community produce a neighbourhood plan where the local plan may not be up to date? And the reply on the fact sheet is, through a neighbourhood plan, communities can have a real say about local development and protect important green spaces. The NPPF is very clear that where a planning application conflicts with a neighbourhood plan that has been brought into force, planning permission should not normally be granted. NPPF paragraph 198. But contradictorily, again, in the case I've cited in Brereton, the inspector's report allowing the appeal for these 190 houses actually says, and I quote, reference was made to paragraph 198 of the framework, which provides that where a planning application conflicts with a neighbourhood plan, as in this case, which he acknowledges, that has been brought into force, planning permission should not normally be granted. So far, so good. However, it goes on to say the position here is not normal, in that, as Neighbourhood Plan Policy HOU01 is clearly a relevant policy for the supply of housing and is in conformity with local plan policies which are themselves out of date, i.e. there's no current neighbourhood plan, only limited weight can be afforded to the policy. So, as my residents are saying, it looks as though the Department is saying that conflict of an application with a neighbourhood plan would result in refusal of a planning permission, even though a local plan is not up to date, that's the fact sheet, but the planning inspectorate is saying that a neighbourhood plan can be given only limited weight for the very reason that the local plan is out of date. So in conclusion, can I ask ministers to clarify the weight, the actual weight, which is to be given to made neighbourhood plans in the absence of a local plan, and also to provide increased weight to a draft plan because of the stage it has reached. Because many of these communities now, who are in the process of developing plans, as I say, have become disillusioned. There are many months still to go before their plans can be finalised, and they want to know whether it is worth continuing. And can I finally ask, could there be a fairer methodology for calculating a deliverable 5-year land supply? Because the head of planning strategy at Cheshire East Council has confirmed to me, if we could count all our current permissions in the borough, we would have a 5-year supply as things stand. But things don't stand there because the problem arises from the fact that developers don't build out, do they? They are tardy, and they are deliberately tardy because they simply want to get more and more permissions. They are, as colleagues have said, gaming the system.